School starts this week for Greater Clark County Schools, and we have Superintendent Mark Laughner joining us this morning to get parents and students ready for that first day.
And good morning. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, health experts are expecting the Delta variant of COVID-19 to be a problem this fall. What safety precautions are in place for classrooms, lunchrooms, and buses?
Well, and that definitely is a concern for us, the uptick in cases here, and we're going to follow that very closely. Now, we expect our students, staff to follow our policies and procedures and protocols that we have in place for COVID in terms of the deep cleaning, the disinfecting. Now, we did ease up on the mask wearing from the extent to the extent that it's a parent choice. For students and staff, they have a choice whether they wear masks in the school building. On our buses, that's a federal guideline, so our students have to wear masks on the buses if they ride the bus. But we feel good about the policies we had in place last year in terms of distancing, contact tracing, and we'll continue to enforce those policies and follow those. The one thing we really just eased up on was the mask wearing. And we're going to continue to follow the guidelines of the county health department, the state health department, and then obviously if the governor issues an executive order dealing with something we need to do at the school level, then we're going to follow that, as a school district.
Some parents expressed after the school board said masks optional that they might be concerned about either their student or someone in their household being at risk. What are the options for families who are not quite sure about that?
Well, we do have a virtual program, that we have students enrolling in and have enrolled in. But I want to go back to, a student can wear a mask if they want to, and parents have that option to make sure their child wears a mask to school. And, on our side of things, as a school district, we're going to make sure that that's okay. We don't want students to feel uncomfortable just because they're wearing a mask and maybe other kids aren't, or some staff members are wearing a mask and some staff aren't. We want that to be a very easy thing for everybody to understand and do if they would like to do that, because they want to make sure that they're safe. But we just felt strongly that it needed to be a parent option to start this school year. And we also communicated out that everything is subject to change, as we move through the school year. If the pandemic gets worse, if there's more cases, and we get more guidance from the county health department or the state health department to be a little stricter on the mask, then we'll make the appropriate changes.
Now, if a student does test positive for COVID-19 during the school year, will others in the classroom have to quarantine for 14 days?
Yes, we are still following those guidelines in terms of if a student or staff member is considered an exposure, they'll have to quarantine unless they can show us that they've been vaccinated and have no symptoms. If they've been vaccinated and they have no symptoms, then they do not have to be quarantined. So that's one new area. As a district, we're not going to ask people if they've been vaccinated or make them provide documentation up front, but that's one area where if they do not want to be quarantined, whether it's student or staff, we'll ask them to voluntarily provide us documentation that they've been vaccinated so that they don't have to be quarantined.
Your students were in school for the better part of last year. There was a shutdown Thanksgiving to early January, but you were going to school during the pandemic when cases were far higher than they are now. What kinds of things did you learn from that you would share with parents, maybe to reassure them about how this school year could go?
Well, and you're right. We were the first public school district in the state of Indiana to start last year. We started on July 29th. And the reason we were able to do that is because I felt like, and the board felt like, we had great policies in place to protect our students and staff, and we did. When you look at all of last year, we had 70% of our kids coming in person to school the whole school year, and we had a little less than 200 positive cases throughout all of last year. Which to me, with 7,000 students coming to school every day, that was fantastic in terms of those numbers. And we feel like we can do that same thing again this year. I think the key thing is communication, and the number one priority is safety for our students and staff. And we're always going to err on the side of safety. If a student needs to be quarantined or something like that. And we're going to make sure that our staff and our teachers are cleaning, when necessary, disinfecting when necessary, and just following a lot of the same guidelines that were successful last year. We're going to make sure we follow those guidelines this year and really make sure we communicate with our parents.
Let's talk about learning loss. When students come back to school, how are you going to test for learning loss, see where students are at academically, and how are you going to catch them up and get them to where they need to be?
Yes, and that's a concern. Our iLearn data just came out from the state. We did see a decrease in scores in terms of iLearn data, and so that's a very big concern for us. What we're doing, we're hiring an extra interventionist for each elementary school in our district and also our middle schools. So every elementary and middle school in Greater Clark School District will have 2 interventionists now, and those positions will be in place for the next 2 years. We're using ESSER 3 money to do that. And the expectation is that those interventionists will identify those kids that are behind and need extra help and extra time, and then they'll spend the time working with those kids in each individual school to try to get them caught up. So that's where we put our focus, in terms of hiring interventionists that can work with the kids every day of the school year and try to get them caught up.
We very much appreciate your time, and we wish you a wonderful start to the school year. Thank you, Superintendent Laughner.
Thank you. Appreciate it.